It is very important for us to know the difference between plants and animals. In our previous video, I was able to explain the similarities between plants and animals. So today, I'm going to go through some differences between both of them. All right. So one important aspect here is that plants is quite different from animals in different ways, and animals is quite different from plants in different ways. So the first thing is food production. So you can see this illustration here. This is a good example of a food chain. So Fen is a producer. All right, they manufacture their own food themselves. So they are dependent. So sorry, they are independent. They're independent on themselves. They don't depend on any other animals for food. But though they depend on other external factors like sunlight, rainfall, nutrients. But the good thing is that they have this mechanism within them that they can use to manufacture themselves. Just for example, if you want to cook a meal, you need the pot, you need water, you need spices, you need all ingredients. So all these are quite important factors that plants do use. So that's why they have your chloroplast, they have your chlorophyll, they need sunlight, they need other factors for them to be able to manufacture their own food. But animals, in the other hand, they are dependent. They are dependent on plants, and some are dependent on animals themselves. For example, if you look at this food chain, crickets feed on ferns. So which means if ferns does not exist, crickets will die because they have nothing to feed on. And if these crickets die, this mouse will also die because this mouse depends on cricket. So mouse is highly dependent on the cricket. The snake also is very dependent on the mouse. You can understand. So animals are dependent, plants are independent. Okay, so these just a clear differences between plants and animals. All right. So the next one is movement. Animals tend to move. For example, lion chase after other animals. So if they cannot move, how can they catch their prey? It's not possible. So they need to catch a prey. So they need to move from one place to another for them to be able to catch a prey. So movement is one very important aspect of animals because they need to move and look for food, run away from predators and all that. So this is one of the good characteristics of for animals. So for plants don't actually move anyway. They stay in a fixed position. All right, they stay in a fixed position. For example, if you look at this tree here, now the tree has some nuts. All right. So it gets to a point where the nuts will get to the soil. All right. When it gets to the soil, what happens? These nuts can actually be dispersed. There's a term called disperser. All right. So these nuts can actually be dispersed in different way. An animal can come and feed on the nuts. It feed on the nut and throw the seed to someone else. So this plant that's standing here can actually now be found in a new place. Why? Because of what? Disperser. So once it eats the fruit of this plant, you throw away the seed. When the seed gets to its soil, okay, once it gets to its soil, what's going to happen is that it's going to grow. So in this soil like this, once the soil have all the nutrients, have all the potassium, sodium, and all that, the plant will be able to manufacture itself and grow in a new environment. So this is the way in which plants tend to migrate from one place to another. And a very good term of this is called disperser. Okay, so they don't actually move from one place to another like animals, but they only move through the seed through a mechanism called disperser. And this actually happens through different factors. So those factors can be wind can blow some of them, and animals can take them from one place to another. You understand? Don't worry, this topic is good. I'm going to teach this topic as we go further. I won't get to the spider of fruits and seeds in biology. Where I'm going to explain the spider. I'm going to explain all these mechanisms in which plants use to move from one place to another. Okay, so chlorophyll. So plants has chlorophyll. They use this chlorophyll to trap sunlight, and when they trap the sunlight, they're able to utilize sunlight for photosynthesis. Okay, and chlorophyll is a green coloring pigment found in plants. All right. So animals does not have chlorophyll because we don't manufacture our own food. We are dependent. We're dependent on other plants for survival. All right. So animal does not have chlorophyll, but plant has chlorophyll. Okay. So for cell wall is only found in plant. Plant has the cell wall. Animal does not have cell wall. All right. So plants use cell wall for a lot of things. Sometimes it give them shape. It gives them this wonderful shape they have. It helps them to be able to retain a lot of nutrients which they have actually stored in this big vacuole here. Okay, so we animals, we don't have a cell wall. That's why if you look at the animal cell, it look very irregular and somehow circular. Okay, so there's just one differences between plants and animals. So the next one will have growth pattern. So plants and animals, they grow in different pattern. All right. So for the first one, for plants, plant tends to grow all through their lifetime. So for example, if I cut the stem of a plant, what happens? That stem will tend to regenerate and grow out again. All right. Plants keep growing, keep growing. So if you cut any part of the plant, it grows and give rise to other branches. All right. So this is quite different from animals. All right. Because animals stop growing after reaching maturity. So once you reach a level of maturity, your growth will tend to stop. That's why I see some people when they get taller to a certain extent, suddenly they'll stop growing tall. They just become dormant. All right. So this is the difference between plants and animals. Okay. So the next one, food shortage. Food shortage. So plants store food storage. Yeah, sorry. Plants store food mainly as starch. Yeah. So during photosynthesis, just nutrients and everything is being stored in the plant in form of starch. That's why you can get good and natural starch from plants. And all this starch is stored inside the chloroplast. All right. So those are the chloroplasts. All right. So this chloroplast is just like I will describe chloroplast like a pot. All right. It's kind of a pot where you put other ingredients, and when you cook everything, everything is being stored inside the pot as a meal. All right. So that's how a chloroplast look like. If you look at the chloroplast is green in color. Why? Because it contains chlorophyll. And I told you that chlorophyll is that green coloring pigment found on the plant. And this green coloring pigment help to trap sunlight. If you carry a plant, if you carry a green plant and put it in the sun, they retain the sunlight. But if you take them to a dark room, a room that is very dark, you discover that the stems and every other part will start becoming yellow. Why? Because the chlorophyll is starting to fading away from the plant. Okay, so this is just something we'll do later as we go further in this course. All right. So animals store food mainly as glycogen. So we store food in form of fat in our body. That's why if you eat excess food, you start storing excess fat in your body. Okay. So this is a very clear definition and clear differences between both plants and animals. Plants stores food in form of starch. Animals stores food in form of glycogen. So the next one here, you have your vacuoles. So vacuoles is found in plants. It's a very big central part of plants that stores excess nutrients. Because plants sucks nutrients in form of liquid in the soil. So which means they need to have a mechanism whereby they can store that large amount of liquid they've stored. So they have a large vacuole in the cell that stores all nutrients or stored excess nutrients in the soil from the soil. Yeah. So animals have small temporary vacuole, or sometimes some animals don't have any of them. Okay, so there is just one big difference between both of them. One has vacuole, the other one has a very small vacuole, and some organism doesn't have vacuole present. So this is how vacuole look like. You can see this central part here. This is how big the vacuole is. It stores a lot of nutrients, which is the root of sucked from the soil. Okay, so the next one is response to stimuli. So the response to stimuli in plants is very slow. All right, because if sunlight, like I've mentioned several times, the plant tends to bend towards sunlight. Okay, and that process is very, very slow. It doesn't occur very fast like that of animals. So animal, the response is very fast because why? You have a nervous system. So if I put my hand into your hot water, I tend to remove my hand very fast. Why? Because the hot water, because my nervous system and all other mechanism has actually shown that hey, you're touching hot water and it's very hot, and my response is very quick. Take it out. If I put my hand, if I prick my skin with a sharp object, what happened? I tend to remove my hand from the sharp object. Okay, so our response to animal is very fast. For that of plants is very slow. Okay, so mode of nutrition. Yeah, so when I teach you guys mode of nutrition, I'll give you guys these two major terms we call autotrophic and heterotrophic. So autotrophic means self-feeding. So this plant manufactures their food and they feed themselves by themselves. So animals are heterotrophic. Why? Because they depend on others for food. They cannot manufacture their own food themselves, so they depend on others for food. When human being, yeah, you'll be thinking that okay, yes, we human being we tend to cook our food. Those food you cook, where do you get it from? You get it from plants. We didn't manufacture plants, so we depend on plants for food. So we have heterotrophy because we depend on other organisms for food. Okay, so sense organs. So for sense organs, plants do not possess sense organs. Okay, but we human beings will have different sense organs. You have the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the skin. So these are special sense organs that is found in animals. Okay, so just a summary table of everything. Okay, so you can take your time to get the pen and paper, just write this down. So, how the features, you have the plants, you have the animals. So, features food production. So, plants make their own food, animals cannot make their own food. Movements, you plants they are fixed to one position, animals they move freely. Chlorophyll present and absent. So, you can take your time and go through this table. This gives you just a clear differences between what I've explaining in the previous slides. So, it is very important for you guys to just kind of test yourself with this question and see how you can perform. Okay, the first one is, why can plants make their own food, why animals cannot? And why do animals need to move from one place to another? And what could happen if plants do not contain chlorophyll? Why are plants called producers? Explain why animals are called consumers. Which difference which difference between plants and animals do you think is the most important, and why? Can a plant survive without sunlight? Explain. How does the presence of a cell wall benefit plants? Okay, so these are questions that you can play with, which is very important. And any question that seems very difficult and you want to discuss about, you can put it in the comment section and we're going to discuss all these things together. Okay, so if you're watching this video to this point, I want to say thank you and keep watching my videos, because you get to a point. Yes, I was starting with the elementary part of biology, which just is beginning the living things and non-living things. If we get to a point when I start teaching more technical parts, I'm going to take my time and be doing work examples, questions that can come out in exams and everything. And just follow me on this journey, and trust me, you're not going to regret it. And you're going to enjoy all the experience we're going to have in this subject. Okay. So please just subscribe to my channel so you can keep watching my steady updates I'm going to be dropping every week. So thank you very much and see you next time.